You know how it was a great day when you played football and you started football? You always wanted to get to the day where you put on pads, you got to crack some people, and you got to hit. That was the best day about football. And today, the Detroit Lions on July 25th got to experience that for the first time this year. And usually I do training camp observations, and I did them before about, when they were in shorts and everything, like years past. I did the first day because that was noteworthy, Levi, Enrique, and all that jazz. But now that they got the pads on, I love doing this because you separate the men from the boys. There's certain players that look really good in shorts where they look unstoppable. You get them out of shorts, you put them in pads, and they're a very different player. Now, today, I have an article from Nolan Bianchi of the Free Press, and I've met Nolan a couple times. He's a damn good guy, and he's a damn good writer. Here is his article from the Detroit News. He says linebacker Zach Cunningham, who's been taking first team reps in the place of injured Alex Anzalone, who is also, I think you might want to, without saying it out loud, might be holding out. Uh, was the most noticeable player on the field on Friday. On the first offensive possession, he made two excellent stops. First, a run stop for no gain on Dave Montgomery, and then a stop on Jameer Gibbs for minimal yardage. He remained out there for the second team and made the tackles on 2 of 4 plays. Now, I'm not going to, talk to you about Zach Cunningham. I will say this about Zach Cunningham. I watched him at Vanderbilt. I thought he was going to be a very talented linebacker in the NFL. Unfortunately, he's kind of fallen by the wayside. He was good in Houston. I don't know what really happened to the guy, but he has some talent. There's no doubt about it. And watching him at Vanderbilt, he definitely seen some talent from the young guy. He's a very talented player, and I would be shocked if he made the roster with the depth at that position. But you really never know. And, players really make their hay. So let's go on to the article. And then you go on here, it said, when the first team took reps, the next set of reps, there was a Cunningham again, stopping Gibbs for a tackle for loss alongside safety Brian Branch. One play later, he was the first man to run by Montgomery. Later on the session, Cunningham got home on a blitz and forced quarterback Jared Goff to throw the ball out of bounds, something we haven't seen all camp. So this guy, Zach Cunningham, he's putting together such a hell of a camp. Early on, you want to make an impression on the coaches. And the only way you can make an impression on the coaches is making plays in practice. And this guy, he's likely fighting for his NFL career because, look, you don't get many shots at the apple cart. You really don't. And when you have a chance to make a roster like the Detroit Lions, you got to try to make it at any cost. If the Lions see that there's a value in this guy and they don't see there's a value in someone else, he might get that roster spot. And that's what makes training camp very, very rewarding, and it makes it fun. And here's the thing. With the 4 preseason games, he's going to get a lot of runway. He will get a lot of runway, and he's going to force the Detroit Lions coach's hands. And I'm sure that other teams are taking note too, especially in the preseason game. So he's not just fighting for a roster spot with the Detroit Lions. He's fighting for a roster spot for the whole NFL, because these GMs, they take onus of every roster in the NFL. And when a player gets cut that they thought could have made their roster, they usually grab them. That's what happens in the NFL. But let's go on. So the first couple of series, the offense ran 80% of the plays, and it's undoubtedly easier to make a play when you're pretty sure a run is coming. But consider my latest, my interest peaked. He goes on, after keeping Tate Ratledge at center for the first 3 days, the Lions have kept him at right guard, putting Graham Glasgow at center for the last 2. Now, I spoke about this. I spoke about this on my podcast. It's not going to be hard to put Graham Glasgow at center. There's 2 reasons why, and it's very simple. Remember when Frank Ragnow was a rookie? He was put at guard to start, and then Dominic Raiola was in the middle, and then they moved out Dom, and Frank took over the center position. Graham Glasgow is an older veteran. And last year he struggled, but he was at a wrong position, in my opinion, and he even said so in an article with the Detroit News and the Free Press. But he, he's a guy that knows the offense. He knows the protections. He knows what he has to do. It would make sense for Graham Glasgow to be the starting center. It just would. Like on a realistic standpoint, yes, you would love to put Tate Ratledge at center and make him earn his stripes. But if you really want to get Tate Ratledge the most development, let's develop your blocking. Let's develop, how you how what our verbiage is, how we interact with each other, and then you could slide over here next year. That's kind of the way I put it. We did the same thing with Frank when he was drafted. I think it would be smart if the Detroit Lions did that again. And what they're doing with Graham Glasgow is the same thing that I kind of expected, that they're going to put Tate Ratledge at guard and ask him to make a decision, and that's what they're going to do. So I don't. When I see Graham Glasgow starting at center, I kind of expected this because this is exactly what we did with Frank. And Dom was a good player. Glasgow knows to play center. He's a good center. He's a good guard. So if you could slow it along for Tate Ratledge where he's not getting overwhelmed, that might be the best thing for this kid. So let's go on. When you get the day off, this is Coach Campbell on Glasgow. He goes, when you get the day off, you like the ability to kind of sit back and think about it, and then it's like, you know what? Why don't we let's go ahead then throw Graham in there at center and get Tate some of those guard reps? Coach Campbell said, and look, it's not shocking, but that's what I expected. He says it right here. He says, we're still going to work Ratledge at center, but let's go ahead and see what this looks like for a little bit. We go into pads, and so like I said, we're just seeing what we can find. What's the best combination? Who's going to play the best where? And that's where Tate will get some center reps and go, and he can go back inside on some stuff. So look, like I just said, Coach Campbell says it to a T. He's trying to figure out the best combination, who works best with Goff, who works best with the protections. Does this give Tate Ratledge a little bit of a breather? Can he learn outside of being a center the guard position? Because if you learn the guard position, you can move to the center position. That's usually the way it works. So, especially when you're taking reps at center, so that wouldn't be shocking to me. Now we go on, and this is where there's some good stuff in this article. Speaking of defense, it's safe to say the defense won the day on the first day of pads. Just amazing. This is in some way to be expected because of the run frequency. I just mentioned 21 of 24 plays were rushes, but the pass rush made plays when given the opportunity. He goes on. He goes, edge rusher Marcus Davenport pushed offensive tackle Penei Sewell into Jared Goff on 11-11 rep. And edge rusher Mitchell Agude beat rookie tackle Mason Miller on the pressure of quarterback Kyle Allen. And then Aiden Hutchinson had a sack on the final play of the team period, beating Dan Skipper before getting the Goff. That defense coordinator Calvin Shepard later criticized his unit for poor tackling in the final 11-on-11 drill, but before that, it was mostly positive from Detroit's defense. I love that, and I'll give you a reason why. When you talk about a guy like Calvin Shepard, he is just intense as all can get out, and you love a guy that has high expectations of his defense. And the way Calvin Shepard plays that player, you can tell that he's going to do the same as a coach, and he's going to expect the same out of his players. And Calvin Shepard was a reliable tackler when he was with the G-men and all that jazz. So his intensity is going to wear with that defense. And they stopped practice the last 2 days out of pads because it was too rough. I mean, that's what you want in a defense, just a rough and tough defense. And that's what the Detroit Lions are going towards. So let's go on. Let me put it up. They did begin with a one-on-one tackling drill where a ball carrier tried to get past the defender while working in a confined space. The most notable reps came between wide receiver Jameson Williams and cornerback Terry Arnold, the later of whom returned to practice after leaving Thursday. It was Terry Arnold. After Williams won the first rep, Arnold hit Williams so forcibly that Williams' helmet popped off. The two developed an intense rivalry, leading to the bragging rights on every rep, which carries over from their college days at Alabama. Amazing. Love it. And then Montgomery skirted Jack Campbell on his first rep, but a little while later, Campbell smoked Montgomery like a heat-seeking missile to end the drill. You know what I love is, Jack Campbell was called out by Dan Campbell. And Dan Campbell was on Sirius XM radio, and he said that Jack is going to be the force of this defense. And when you miss a tackle the force of the defense, you want to make sure that you can make a play. And that's exactly what he did. He didn't make the play at first. Then he comes back like a heat-seeking missile. You love to see that if you're just a fan, if you're a football fan, you love to see it. Now let's go on because this is the most intriguing part of this whole thing. There's two rookie wide receivers that I've been talking about this whole time. Isaac TeSlaa and Dominic Lovett. And I think both could be contributors on this team. And I think that if they get a chance to be on this team, they're going to make some plays, in my opinion. And I think Isaac TeSlaa, I talked about in the podcast with James. I think if you get Isaac TeSlaa and you want a real good comp to what Isaac TeSlaa could be, I was told by someone who's in the business that he could be a Puka Nacua. And if he's a Puka Nacua, we got a real fun season ahead. Real fun season. Let's go on. Let's see what Nolan Bianchi reported in this. He says, rookie receiver Isaac TeSlaa had a few great moments on Friday to begin the day. In one-on-one, TeSlaa ran over defensive back Maurice Norris. He like a mere tackling dummy. Then in a one-on-one receiving drill, he went up against and snatched the ball away from a defensive back, Advante Maddox, on a ball down the sidelines. Moments later, he torched cornerback DiCaprio Boodle in the same drill, leaving the cornerback in the dust after a corner route. Now, I have been a huge proponent of Isaac TeSlaa. I think he's going to be really good. I know a lot of people were kind of, why did they pick him? Why did they trade up to get him? I don't doubt Brett Holmes right there because I seen Arkansas a lot last year. And I can tell you right now, he is going to be a damn good player for this Detroit Lions team. But let's go on because there's a lot more. And then we'll have, the final get around. All right. So, fellow rookie receiver Dominic Lovett also continued his run of impressive practices. Although Friday didn't start as great in one-on-one tackle and drill, Lovett tried to hurdle cornerback Amik Robertson, only to end up being planted in the turf after Robertson caught him clearly in the midsection. Lovett flashed during special teams periods, a must if you're going to make the team out of camp, and couldn't be stopped during gunner drills. He got his revenge on Robinson in the session, blowing past Robinson with ease on his way to the tackle and dummy. Now, I said on the podcast, I said if Dominic Lovett is going to make this team, it's going to be on special teams. And I watched him at Georgia. He's got some special teams characteristics. And when you look at guys that the Detroit Lions keep on the roster, remember when we go back and when we did the running back rankings, remember that Sion Vaki last year, if I could get it up, Sion Vaki was on 71% of the special team snaps. Craig Reynolds was on 60 and was on 59% of the snaps on special teams. That's what the Detroit Lions value. And if you look at wide receivers, all the wide receivers, Cleve Freeman, there's a lot of players that on that wide receiver group that played on special teams. So keep that into conjunction. Now, there was, a couple other notes, and we're going to get to that right now. Obviously, when you think about wide receiver, Tim Patrick was persistent in Friday's practice, but quickly pulled aside with a trainer individually. He had a little bit of injury thing. Malcolm Rodriguez, who's working his way back from a torn ACL, also spent practice on the second field. He's running pretty well, and he could possibly return from November to October. Tyleik Williams' absence at practice opened up an opportunity for reserve players like Chris Smith, a former UDFA, Keith Cooper. Tyleik Williams did not practice. Lions defensive lineman Pat O'Connor, who had a tackle for loss, called Cooper a dog. Interesting. He's getting after the pass rush. O'Connor said he needs a little more rocks in his pocket in his run, but that's just different. He's a hell of a player. I can't wait to see what he does next Thursday. O'Connor has been getting some love, mostly for Dan Campbell, and we know that he's a jack of all trades. And Dan Campbell said this. He said he's a jack of all trades. Campbell said of O'Connor this week, he's versatile, and that's why he just keeps competing to stay on rosters because he's hard to ignore. A guy like Tim, he's doing so many different jobs. If you get him into the game, you're going to be able to use him. And you can make a case that Pat O'Connor was huge last year for this Detroit Lions team because when they needed pass rush help, he was huge for that. And he definitely deserves to be on this roster, especially off what he did last year. And even guys like Miles Adams, I mean, they did a damn good job last year. And even Brad Holmes did a damn good job with the depth that he had on the defense. And they were going out every week getting random guys. But it's a good first day of pads for the Detroit Lions. Obviously, Isaac TeSlaa, Dominic Lovett, Zach Cunningham all shine today in the practice. It's very interesting. Like, you can't wait to get till next Thursday because of who's going to show out. That's the major point. So we'll see what happens moving forward. We'll have another couple training camp videos before the next preseason game. And then we'll talk about the preseason game, obviously. But stay tuned to J Sports for all your Detroit Lions coverage. Also, you can get any Detroit sports coverage. We're going to have Tigers, Lions, Red Wings, Pistons, Michigan State. It's going to be a busy month for the JC Sports YouTube page. So just hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and we'll see you in the next video as we talk more Detroit Lions football here on JC Sports Detroit.